I think, oh, yeah, I don't think oh, there we go. Good evening. Welcome to this public meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Palo Alto Unified School District. The board met in closed session beginning at 5:30 and took 3 reportable actions. The board in closed session voted 5-0 to approve the employee resignation agreement with employee number HR 0606-22520. In closed session, the board voted 5-0 to place certificated employee number HR 0606-22163 on compulsory unpaid leave of absence pursuant to Education Code sections 44940 and 44940.5. And also in closed session, the board voted 5-0 to reject a claim, Chakmakachi versus PAUSD, PAUSD-GC-2021-22.05. The first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the agenda order.
So moved.
So the approval of the agenda order is moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda order is adopted. Our next item is the report of the superintendent of schools, Dr. Austin.
Okay, thank you. Tonight being our last meeting, we have a couple things that are going to feel a little different than in the past. We're going to have a couple people speak during my time, but I'm going to start here with an announcement with our friend Sharon Ofek, sitting right next to me. Sharon has given me permission to share some exciting news on her behalf. We wish the timing was a little different so we could share more, but we want to respect the end to the process that she's in right now. Sharon has earned and accepted a promotion opportunity in another high-end school district. She's officially approved later this week, so I'm not going to share the name of the school district out of respect to their Board of Education and their process. They are aware, however, that we're making this announcement tonight and fully support it. Just a quick one, because I know Sharon doesn't want to hear me read 3 pages of things about her, although I could. She said, or anything. She didn't actually say that, but I'm just making it up. Sharon has poured a lot of her life into PAUSD, and I'm convinced that I'm not even sure we'd be open yet if Sharon wasn't here. She was so vital during that work, and most people don't know that not only was she leading that work for our district, but she was being contacted by districts all over the state to want to spend time with her, to find out how we got where we got and get her thoughts about how they could do things as well. But forget about the other districts. Her fingerprints are everywhere. From her time here as a site administrator through her work at the district level. Her work ethic, as I've talked about many times, is unparalleled, as is her preparation. She dives deeply into anything she touches, is never afraid to lead from the front. She's a professional in every sense of the word and will be missed here. She's not only an amazing professional, but a personal friend. And I've already exceeded our agreement for how much I would talk about her. And out of fear and proximity, I'm going to stop here. But Sharon, know that while your time here as an employee is over, your time as our friend is not. PAUSD is a better place because of you. And your new district has no idea how lucky they are, but they will find out soon enough. So I'd like to congratulate Sharon. I'm also wanted her to have an opportunity to say a couple words before I continue on with my report.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. I will be brief, and I will stick to my time, but I just want to share that I have had the pleasure of working for and within the Palo Alto Unified School District community and for its stakeholders for the past 23 years in a variety of different capacities. I've worked my way from being a teacher to being a site administrator, a principal, to district office positions. And I just want to take this moment in time, this opportunity to thank everyone who has been instrumental in my 23-year run to, really say thank you very much. But most of all, and most importantly, I hope I've made a positive difference in the lives of our students and their futures. So thank you for everything, and thank you for the support along the way.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah,
Before we go on to the next topic?
That's fine. That's fine.
I won't gush for long, I promise, but I just want to thank you. I think that you are the perfect example of an instructional leader that even though you came to the district office and as you continue to do your work, you have always led with students and with instruction. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. And you've been a great thought partner on things like grading and things like reopening and all that. In all the craziness of the past 6 years that I've been around, it's really been a pleasure to learn from you and brainstorm with you and make improvements alongside you. So thank you.
And I want to echo that, and I think on behalf of the rest of the board and the community, I think the contributions you've made are numerous and probably hard to quantify at this point. I think you're probably still seen as a model middle school principal, as well as a great district administrator. I remember your work on alignment, on homework, and on a million other things, including COVID. And all of those were extremely important contributions that the benefits are going to be felt by our students for a long time to come. So thank you so much, Sharon, for your contributions, and we wish you well.
I'll just say that I came to this district as a student 2 decades ago. And so your impact has not only been important for students in general, but almost certainly for my own path. And so just a big thank you for that.
As Pali alums, go out, make us proud. We're so proud of you, and we're so happy for you.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks again, Sharon. 2 more pieces of my report. The next piece is on committees. Just heading into the 22-23 school year, we've really thought, like you should at the end of the year, about opportunities to do things better and different. We want to expand our outreach in general. Not as an excuse, but just a reality. This will be the first time in a while when we aren't fixated on closures, reopening, or having to make decisions quickly because our immediate attention was required on something else. So when you have an opportunity to prepare and get ahead of things and do things differently, you should. And we're planning to. As a result, we're launching 6 new short-term committees with broad representation, clear charges, and predetermined deadlines. Each group will have an identified lead and will be expected to provide progress updates throughout the year. By the time these groups reach recommendations, we hope they will have had plenty of opportunities and time for discussion and creative problem solving. The committees right now include secondary bell schedules, childcare, and for childcare, the childcare will, as an example, have district administrators, could have teachers, could have a variety of people, will certainly have parents, but will not have any prospective vendors. The idea here is not to do the selection, but to create the criteria that would be used for selection of programs at a later time. Enrollment trends and options. Let me just cut through that one. Our schools are small, and some schools are very small, and we need to talk about that. And probably the best place to get that started is in a committee to really creatively think about some options. Choice programs. We've already said that next year we'll be doing an evaluation of our choice programs. A lot of people just think about the elementary schools, but we're going to have choice programs at all 3 middle schools, 2 next year and 1 on the horizon. So it's just a really good time to talk about choice programs. I've already been asked, is there a connection between choice programs and enrollment? Yeah, probably. I don't know how we would look at choice programs and not have it be a consideration for our enrollment and how things look across the district. Athletic funding. I talked to our principals about athletic funding, but honestly, the list come in a little sporadic for the request, and while we could address some things along the way, it probably makes sense for us to really sit down and think about athletic funding in general in a consistent way for the entire district. And consent education. And my team wanted to make a clear distinction between consent education and SEL curriculum. They're different, and this is going to have a narrow scope of consent education across the levels. So I'm excited about the committee work. I think it's going to help us really set up for a nice mid to end of the year next year with better preparation on the front end. My final piece tonight is we have already approved our new Director of Student Services, but I asked him to be with us tonight so that you can meet him and his family, who is also in attendance with him. But Herb Spredo is our new director, and Herb is coming to us from San Jose. He's already been approved. Let's catch my notes here. Okay. Herb was recently the principal of Pioneer High School in San Jose and was a San Jose Unified School District Administrator of the Year. If you're not familiar with San Jose, they're bigger than us, so to be selected as the Administrator of the Year is quite an accomplishment. Herb's work history and reference checks were just simply off the charts, and we believe he'll be a perfect fit for us moving forward. I can tell you this just informally, I've run across some people, even on our own school sites, who are familiar with Herb, and everyone has come over to me to say what a fantastic addition Herb is going to be to our team. So at this time, I'd like Herb to come up to the podium, introduce his family, and say a few words so we can welcome him.
All right, thank you. I think this is one of the first times I don't have to say I'm not the student body president at Palo Alto High School. I grew some facial hair over the pandemic. So, my wife, Melissa, is outside with my son, Eli, and my daughter, Nian's always here. So want to thank them for always, supporting me. And first off, I want to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Austin, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. My goal is to not let you down. Throughout the hiring process and the application process, it was evident to me the kind of culture that Dr. Austin's building here and empowering the leaders of this district. And that's what really, attracted me to take on this position. Everybody that I've met at the very short time that I've been here has welcomed me and my family. So really, thank you for the opportunity. Don't want to let you down. And really looking forward to all the systems that all the good things that are happening here at Palo Alto. And my goal is to, again, make a positive contribution to that. So thank you again.
Thank you. Welcome.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Austin. The next item on our agenda is open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on topics that are not on our agenda for this evening. If you look at the agenda, you'll see instructions about how to register your interest in speaking at open forum. There's a web form that you fill in and indicate either this topic, open forum, or any other topic on the agenda, and then we will see that and I'll be able to call on you at the appropriate time. So we will begin with open forum, and we're having some computing issues here. Oh, there we go. We have 4 people who would like to speak at open forum. So as I call your name, you can come up to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes each to speak. The first is Mary Stavin, who will be followed by Myra Azanza. Oh, okay.
My name is Mayra Asanza. I am the mother for Rising Third Grade at Escondido Spanish Immersion. I have to take a note.
Hey, step right up to the mic because they can't hear you on TV. We can hear you, but on TV they can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I had to write my name because I forgot. I get nervous. So my son is in third grade at Escondido Spanish Immersion, and my daughter is an alumni at Escondido. She's in Pali now. And we are here representing parents at the Spanish Immersion. I'm sure you have heard from us. As parents of the Spanish Immersion program at Escondido Elementary School, we are reaching out to the board to share our thoughts and concerns about the decision to implement mixed grade classrooms and to offer our involvement. Our concerns are, 1, teachers' preparation and professional development. We have no doubt about the high quality and deep commitment of the SI teachers at Escondido. They are the best. However, even the best teachers need systematic support to successfully implement a change of this magnitude on such short notice. So far, we have received no indication these kinds of support will be available. 2, equity of students' experience and outcomes. We would like to make sure students' social, emotional, and academic outcomes in combined classroom remain comparable to those students in single-level classrooms. 3rd, long-term prospects of the SI program at Escondido. We understand the decision to implement combined classroom responds to the simultaneous effects of 3 factors. A decline in public school enrollment at the district, state, and even nationally. B, attrition of Spanish immersion students after their kindergarten enrollment. And C, capacity of the Spanish immersion program to attract new students after the kinder year who meet the strict requirements of the SI master plan. If nothing is done to proactively address these issues, the long-term health of the Spanish immersion program at Escondido may be seriously compromised. If students in combined classrooms have support outcomes, the capacity of the Spanish immersion to attract and retain students may be further jeopardized. We need our district to be proactive in preventing attrition of Spanish immersion. This is not a new problem, and we find it really hard to believe, at least I find it really hard to believe, that in California, we cannot find enough families to enroll in our program.
Why don't you go ahead and just restart for this speaker?
Hi, I'm Mary Stavin, mother of a rising 6th grader that went through the SI program and a rising 3rd grader that will be in a new combined classroom, as well as a rising 1st grader that we don't know the outcome of that. Our requests to the board are that we would like to be included as an agenda item in the upcoming PAUSD board meetings. We would like the district to provide additional support and professional development to SI teachers and staff working in combined classrooms. We would like the district and the school to commit to a thorough evaluation of combined classrooms, including the implementation of these classrooms, such as class size, availability of aides, teachers' perspectives, and the outcomes on students, such as attrition and academic achievement. We would like to make sure the entire community learns from this experience and is able to continue improving. We would like to request ongoing and transparent information regarding the district's and schools' long-term plans for the SI program at Escondido. Parents are asked to make, to the best of their ability, a 6-year commitment to the SI program. This commitment requires us to trust that the SI program will be available, functional, and thriving in the long term. We ask the district to provide clarity on how mixed grade classrooms will be implemented before the 22-23 school year starts. Specifically, we would like to know whether 2nd and 3rd grades and 4th and 5th grade will each have A, 2 single grade classrooms and 1 combined classroom, or B, 3 combined classrooms. Parents would like to be formally more involved in supporting the SI program through an SI PTA or other mechanism. We are committed to helping the district and school find strategies to address these issues related to attrition and recruitment of SI students. We'd like to also perhaps establish resources to enhance the classroom experience if combined classrooms are necessary. We would be delighted to share experiences from a diverse group of parents about the factors that increase and decrease the students' chances to remain in the program. For example, the informal conversations and brainstorming sessions parents have offered ideas to recruit bilingual students, which may help the school overcome the loss of students after kindergarten. We are happy to discuss these and other potential strategies that would help us maintain the success and long-term health of the SI program at Escondido we have learned to love. Respectfully, the parents of Spanish immersion at Escondido Elementary School.
Thank you. The next speaker is Adi Greif, followed by Allison Rosen. Oh, okay. Then Allison Rosen.
I'm here to talk about math, of course. So we're getting the distressed parents upset about the middle school skip tests. That's what I'm here to discuss. I represent Edith Cohen as well, who was texting and emailed me from her plane as it took off for Israel. The audience may not know that this dedicated PAUSD parent is also a world-renowned professor of computer science in Israel and a scientist at Google. And she's been volunteering tremendous amount of time supporting math education in our community. She sent all of you her analyses of the skip tests over several years, and we're happy to share that with the community. She provided the board with an analysis of the MDDP, this California data, and the PAUSD developed measure. It'd be far better if we had the NWA MAP data used in 11 million students, and hence far more robust in relative mastery and outcomes and growth. And you can compare to students who are more comparable in terms of expectations. There's also a linked Khan Academy remediation program as well. But that said, we're happy to share the raw data and the analyses, you have that. Regarding Edith's analyses, she's giving us hard data on what we already know. These middle school placement tests are designed to slow progress well beyond what is in the best interests of students. As our children reach high school and aspire to STEM colleges, we see at this time, this wasted time is not free. It's time taken away from more challenging math that really does need that time. Acceptance rates at engineering schools half that of liberal arts, and academic rigor is critical to admissions in UC schools and that no longer look at standardized tests. I think the one big takeaway is that a huge number of students in these skip tests do well on the MDTP, the state test, and would in other school systems be allowed to advance. In contrast, this locally developed test is being used to hold the vast number of these students back. And we have no idea about the validity of this test and why performance on this test is more valid than that of the MDTP. There's also no justification for the rigidly high cut scores used in isolation to mandate students repeat this material, and no evaluation of how these students perform the next year. If you're using a test as a barrier, you need to have evidence that it provides meaningful information, and we simply don't have that. And these are kids from last year, so you can find out how the placement went. Edith even showed that there are higher standards for skipping 7th grade than the actual performance of 7th grade students on the MDTP. Still worse, last year it was required that students pass a subtest on the MDTP called functions, a topic not even taught in our school system. So I think Edith used adequate performance on this test as a surrogate for identifying students with outside preparation. And those students who did not pass this subtest were unjustifiably held back. And you can see the effect of forcing students to repeat material that they've mastered. This is an analysis that PAUSD can do that we can't, repeat and follow individual students and how they do. Another big issue is that there are students allowed to pass even though they don't even meet the rigid rules set up. Honestly, the way these measures are being used, it defies logic. Parents are upset, and things are getting worse than they were in the past. Now the delaning is getting more extreme on the part of the math reboot and the pandemic. We'd really appreciate hearing the outcome data on the success of the program in reducing disparities in achievement. We're not seeing a reduction in the percentages of struggling students. And we believe that there are evidence-based programs that could be used and that could address this far more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes open forum. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are approved all in one action without discussion. If any member of the public or board member wants to comment on an item, then we would pull it from the consent calendar and place the item on our action agenda. Is there a motion? I don't have any members of the public who want to comment on the consent calendar. Is there a motion from board member?
I move we accept the consent calendar as presented.
Second. Consent calendar is moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent calendar is adopted. Then we will move then to our action items. The first item on our action agenda is item 5A, the employment agreement for the Assistant Superintendent of Education Services, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Bahadur Singh, or is this your item?
I'm going to take that one.
Dr. Austin?
Yeah, we're going to introduce Mr. Lopez in just a second, have him come to the podium, although he's been there for us before. But I think tonight he has a different level of excitement and some additional Lopez's with him. So we'll meet them in just a second. But what I'd like to do is make just a couple comments about him, and then you should take action, and then we can bring him up afterwards, if that's okay. Mr. Lopez has been with the district in the role of a director this year, but you know, the move into the assistant superintendent spot is going to be fantastic for him and for us. Just like Ms. Ofek, his work ethic is exactly what we were looking for. And we're excited to have him give us a different perspective on some things as well, both as a former high school principal, longtime counselor, and just some different experiences to come in and keep us focused on the right work. But I'm excited about our future with Mr. Lopez and excited about tonight for him.
Great. So the Brown Act requires that we read the financial terms of executive employment contracts, that we summarize them verbally. So I'm going to do that and then open it up for any board discussion and questions before we take action. The board will consider entering into an employment agreement with Guillermo Lopez. The financial terms of the contract are the following. As to compensation, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services Secondary will receive an annual base salary of $216,844. This annual salary represents step one of the contracted management salary schedule. And as to fringe benefits, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services Secondary shall receive district-paid health, dental, vision, and other fringe benefits in the same manner and subject to the same limitations as other contracted management personnel, as those benefits may change from time to time. We don't have any requests for public comment. Is there any comments or questions for board members or a motion to approve the agreement?
I'll move to approve the agreement.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agreement is approved. Welcome again, Mr. Lopez. Dr. Austin, do you want to take it from here and we'll get to hear from?
Yeah, you know, that's another piece. A little premature on the doctor piece, but he's close.
Oh, there you go.
Another thing that just demonstrates his ability to just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and he's gonna finish that up soon too. But Mr. Lopez, why don't you come on up and introduce your family?
Thank you, Dr. Austin, Board of Trustees. Thank you. Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity to continue to serve the community of Palo Alto from the capacity of assistant superintendent. It's kind of, I'm always asked, how you doing today? And I always say, I'm living the dream. And I really feel that I am living the dream because, I came here to Palo Alto with my family, and it has been such a blessing. It's been grateful for the family, the move, number one, but number two, just the experiences and the difference in instruction, the difference in weather. Obviously, from coming from the Central Valley, today it's pretty, it's very similar to the way it would be like around 10 in the morning. But then it just increases. But it's just been great. Everybody's adjusted well. I'm here accompanied by my wife, my rock, my other boss, as I call her, my wife, Maria. My daughter, Sophia, is a little shy. My son, Guillermo Jr., and my youngest son, Max. I'm really surprised that they made it this long, trying to stay quiet and just sitting down. Well, with that being said, it's been, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to continue to serve. We have some great team members coming into, joining our team. Want to, publicly congratulate Ms. Hofik on her promotion and wish her well. Thank you for the support that you've given me during my time here in Palo Alto. We always think about our journey, how we made, how we made it here where we are, right? So, me, I'm all about family. Family has always been number one. That's the way that I was brought up. I'm here I'm here via my parents. I really got to honor my parents, not necessarily just because Father's Day was just on Sunday, but my father has really been a role model for me. My father's the oldest of 12, with 5th grade education. He came to the United States via the Bracero program in the early 60s. 18 years old, came to provide, support his family. Met my wife, met my mother, and the rest is history. So, some of the things that have always instilled in us is to persevere, resiliency, and really be fearless, and not to give up, continue to fight, continue to, provide the supports that we wanted, the supports that we needed, when we were in different situations. So I always told myself when I got to the district office from being at the sites, I want to be the administrator or the district level administrator that I needed when I was at the sites, when I was a high school principal, when I was an assistant principal, when I was a counselor, just be that person that I needed when I needed that support. And that's going to be my job. That's going to be my goal. And I think our team, that's going to be the same approach that we're going to take, and under the leadership of Dr. Austin and the rest of the members here of our executive cabinet. I'm really excited again, and I'm looking forward to the challenges, but I'm also looking forward to the rewards and, again, to continue to serve the community. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Thank you for your contributions and your leadership, which we have appreciated to this point, and we look forward to more, and welcome also to your family. It's great to see you here supporting Mr. Lopez. Any other comments from board members? Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on then to our next item, which is remote public participation. This is an item that we discussed at our last meeting, and we put on the action agenda for tonight. I think there's a motion, so I'm going to recognize Mr. Durant to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Dauber. Let me get my notes because we went through a couple of iterations of the motion. Okay, so I move to permit and enable public participation and comment in regular board meetings via the Zoom platform, beginning at the first meeting of the 2022-2023 academic year.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Drop, do you want to speak to your motion before we have other comments?
Sure. This is a motion that was made based on our practice during the pandemic of allowing and permitting and enabling Zoom comment. After we came back in person and started doing the business of the board in person, Mr. Dauber and the agenda setting committee switched it back to our former practice of allowing only in-person comments. We had a robust discussion at the last meeting about the pros and cons, and my motion is to allow Zoom comments on the grounds of equity. Mr. Dauber discussed an ad hoc committee, and I think that's, well, Mr. Dauber can speak to that, but that's where the motion and the background is.
Thank you so much for that. And as Mr. Drop notes, the board directed me at the last meeting to appoint an ad hoc committee to develop a recommendation for the board around public participation practices. As part of this discussion we've been having, I appointed to the members to that committee Mr. Drop, as I committed to last time, and myself. So we will meet over the course of the summer and bring back a recommendation at our first meeting in September, and I think we're going to have the assistance of Mr. Bahadur Singh on the staff side. Before we discuss Mr. Durap's motion further, I want to take public comment. We have one speaker who wants to comment on this topic, and that is Nicole Chu Wang. Wang, excuse me. I'm told it's Chu Wang, so I apologize for my mispronunciation. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would have corrected you. My name is Nicole Chu Wang, and I have my oldest son will be entering TK at Palo Verde this August. So special thank you to the board for building out the TK program. We're very excited to be here. I believe one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that it forced us to learn how to and to set up the infrastructure to make our government meetings more accessible through Zoom participation remotely. It's an accessibility issue. I believe it's an equity issue. There are plenty of reasons why families, teachers, students, community members might not be able to make it here to 25 Churchill tonight to be with us, whether it's working long hours or a late shift, a lack of childcare, transportation issues, or being immunocompromised and needing to remain super vigilant and cautious. Whatever the reason, keeping Zoom comments overcomes that obstacle and makes our meetings more accessible. From what I understand, this district has historically struggled with finding ways to engage parents in our community in board meetings. And so I don't think that now that we have the ability to do so, we should be limiting that option. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board member comments or questions? I know I have some, but I don't know if others. So I intend to vote against Mr. Durap's motion, not because I don't support Zoom comments, but because I think we're doing this in the wrong order, and we risk creating unintended consequences that will be difficult for us to undo having adopted this. And I'll sort of lay out my concern. In fact, we had a quite timely example of what concerns me in terms of its potential sometime in the last couple of weeks, or maybe it was earlier than that, but anyways, it got my attention in the last couple of weeks. There was an action bulletin published by the Center for Equal Rights, I think it's called, in San Diego, that called on folks to reach out to the school board here in Palo Alto because of its objection to what it called equity grading, which it connected to critical race theory, and was a call to action to contact the board to oppose this. And we got some emails as a consequence of that, and there was a pointer to attend the board meeting, although we don't yet have, we didn't have any public comment on that topic during open forum. I don't have any objection to people criticizing the district's equity grading practices or calling us to account on critical race theory or whatever it is that people want to talk about. But what did catch my attention was that this is an organization in San Diego which has ambitions to talk about policy generally. They support they talk about Prop 209 and Ward Connolly, and so they've got us kind of a larger political purpose, and identified the district as a target for comment around the issues that they care about. Now, with our current public comment practices, for someone to make a comment at a board meeting in response to that call to action requires that they be here in Palo Alto and that they stand at the podium and that they make that comment. With Mr. Durap's motion, all they have to do wherever they are in the world is to sit down at their computer and click a Zoom link and register, and now they've got however long we give them to make public comment. And that is a pretty radical change in our practices, and it has, I don't even think maybe the unintended consequence, but certainly not the unforeseeable consequence that we will get folks doing that at some point in the future. I think that's just 100% certain. Now, we can, and Mr. Durap and I are going to sit together and try to figure out some rules around this. Well, one possible rule is let's limit the total amount of public comment so that if we have 100 folks who want to spend, or 200 folks or 300 folks who want to talk about critical race theory in Palo Alto, maybe we limit them to 30 minutes. So we only take the first 30 of them, which makes some sense. But then we think, well, what if we have maybe not 300 folks in Palo Alto, but maybe 10 people in Palo Alto, parents in Palo Alto, want to comment on critical race theory and want to either take a position opposing or defending that. Well, now they have to compete with those 300 folks online who also want to comment. So we risk crowding out our local commenters in favor of Zoom commenters who could be anywhere in the world. Well, now, there's a solution to that. Why don't we just say that we give priority to people who are in the room? But wait, giving priority to the people in the room is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do. So my point is not that Zoom comments are bad or that these are unsolvable problems, but it's putting the cart before the horse to commit first to Zoom comments and then afterwards figure out how we're going to manage the implications of them. It's kind of a ready, fire, aim strategy, which I think, given the lack of real urgency around this, just doesn't make sense, doesn't constitute good policy making. What we can do instead is go through the process that we're now in of thinking about how to handle public comment, how to handle Zoom participation in that context. We can come back, we can look at this in a thoughtful way. We can look at the recommendations that Mr. Durap and I come up with, and then we can make a considered decision about how to proceed with that. In another context today, in another meeting, somebody uttered the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't want to suggest that we're on the road to hell, but the good intentions that we have, combined with the lack of considered foresight about how to handle it, suggests that that may be our destination, even if that's not our intention. So my strong suggestion is that we wait until we can carefully consider, not just the solution, but also how we're going to handle the solution, and take up Zoom comments in one of our first board meetings of the year. We won't, it's true that we won't have Zoom comments in our very first board meeting, but we also won't be committing ourselves in future boards to a practice that we may not want to adopt without some careful consideration and some building of practice around. So I intend to vote against the motion, and I urge my colleagues to take a breath, wait a minute, and do this in the right order. Mr. Brienza.
So I feel like you're being a little alarmist here. We had Zoom comments for over 2 years, and there were probably a handful of meetings where there were a lot of comments, and we didn't have any of this issue. It doesn't mean the issue won't happen in the future, but I think the difference here is if we do it your way, I guess there's a chance we might actually decide not to do them or do them. But basically, by approving them now, we've said our number one priority is that we're going back to Zoom comments. Now you guys go work it out, go figure it out. And there's really no reason to wait because we know we're going to go back to Zoom comments. And now you've got the entire summer where there's no board meetings to work it out. So I hope you guys go at a pretty good clip and work through everything you have to work through so that we'll be all ready for the board meeting in the fall and in August with your proposals. And I look forward to supporting this.
Well, if I can just respond to that.
Sure.
I expect that we'll figure out how to have Zoom comments, but if our worry is that in the future we'll think that it's a bad idea, that is a really bad idea to vote for it tonight and commit ourselves to it.
Didn't Mr. Durap's proposal say for the 22-23 school year? We're not committing us in perpetuity to this, right? This is for us to could you read it again?
I thought he said
it ended
beginning with, but maybe you limit it to? Mr. Durap, do you want to read your motion again or clarify what your intent is?
I said beginning at the first meeting.
Yeah, I think he means,
The first meeting in 22-23.
Right.
I think he means to commit the boards in perpetuity to the practice.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, anybody else want to comment? Okay, then let's vote. Mr. Durap's motion, does anybody need it read again? I don't think so. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. The vote passes via, the motion passes by a vote of 3-2. So we'll make that change in practice with the first board meeting of the next year.
Thank you for making the committee to work through all these issues. I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Yeah, I look forward to the work that we'll do. The next item on our agenda is item 5C, which is the LCAP approval and adoption. And I think this is yours, Dr. Austin.
We have no additional information. We spent time on our last meeting on the presentation. Mr. Lopez is here if there are questions. Otherwise, there's no additional presentation.
Are there any comments or questions from board members on the LCAP? Is there a motion?
I move we approve and adopt the LCAP as presented.
A second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion carries. And the next item on our agenda is item 5D, which is the proposed budget for the 2022-23 school year. And this is Ms. Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Dauber. The public hearing on the 22-23 budget was held at our last board meeting on June 7th, was followed by a presentation and discussion on the proposed budget. Budget documents have been available for public review since June 4th. And prior to that date, the proposed budget was reviewed with the district's Fiscal Advisory Committee on May 31st. Neither the board nor the Fiscal Advisory Committee had recommendations for changes to the proposed budget. So tonight, the budget comes before the board for adoption with no changes since we last discussed it at the last board meeting.
Are there any comments or questions from board members? Mr. Collins?
Can I make a motion?
Of course.
I move we adopt the proposed budget as presented and the accompanying resolutions.
A second.
So Mr. Collins' motion is to adopt the budget and also the 4 resolutions that are set out in the item, and that has been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Just thank you for working on the budget. Yet again, we're here.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion carries along with the budget and those associated resolutions. The next item on our agenda, or maybe let me say items, are items 5E, F, and G, which are around construction contracts. Mr. Holm, we might as well, I think, probably take these as a unit, and then you can speak to them and take questions, and then we can vote on them all at once, unless there's some difference in opinion about them.
So item E, the first one, is approving the award of contract for the fire alarm and HVAC project at Palo Verde. We had 3 bidders. The award would go to RC Benson for a total project price of $2,020,000. This approval would require an additional budget adjustment of $488,904 to bring the total project cost to $2.2 million. This is tied to the work we're doing on the main project. This would be a sort of a collateral project that would go alongside it. So we have a different contractor doing the main work on the contract on the campus, and we're taking advantage of moving everyone off campus to get this work done in addition. Then the next item we have, item F, is award a contract for IOR and inspection services for the Pali Tower project. Total fiscal impact of all of those contracts would be $425,000. And these are DSA required inspection services that we have to have if we go forward with the Pali Tower construction project. And then item G is the authorization to award contract for the Pali Tower renovation project to Cal Pacific Construction for $16,370,000. We had 2 bidders on that project, and Cal Pacific was the low bidder. This item includes a budget adjustment of $3.3 million for a total budget of $23 million. That includes also, we previously had the Make Ready project to set up the temp admin, as well as the other support components. The budget adjustment funds will come from the Measure Z reserve.
Okay, thank you for your presentation on those. Any comments or questions from board members? Okay, is there a motion on these items?
I move we approve the contracts and associated authorizations and adjustments as presented.
I second.
We do them all together? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, we're going to just do them all together. That's fine. Okay. Okay, so there's a motion from Mr. Collins, which has received a second, to award these contracts and the authorizations and budget adjustments set out in items E, F, and G. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So those are adopted. Thank you, Mr. Holm.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is item 5H, compensation increases for contracted management positions. I think so. Mr. Bahadur Singh?
I'll take
Dr.
this one.
Austin?
Tonight, you've already approved the new salary schedule. You've also approved the amendments for contract extensions. At this time, all that is left is the compensation piece, and the rules are different. So for contracted positions, you need to read out everything that deals with compensation, anything dealing with finances. As a reminder, this is not putting the contracted positions ahead of anyone else. In fact, it is dead last. Everyone else in the organization last year received a 2-year compensation increase, and the contracted management by design did not. And we thought that we'd bring it back this year. That was the thought from the beginning, and here we are at this point.
Okay, so we don't have any public comment on this. I'm going to read through the fiscal aspects of these compensation increases. So get comfortable. For the Assistant Superintendent of Education Services Elementary, 3% retroactive ongoing increase of $7,109, a 2% one-time off-schedule payment of $4,881, and placement on step 6 of the contracted management salary schedule on July 1st, 2022 at a salary of $247,721. For the Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Student Affairs, 3% retroactive ongoing increase of amounting to $6,901, a 2% one-time off-schedule payment of $4,739, and a placement on step 5 of the contracted management salary schedule on July 1st, 2022 at a salary of $244,060. For the Associate Superintendent of Educational Services, a 3% retroactive ongoing increase of $7,321 and a 2% one-time off-schedule payment of $5,028. For the Chief Business Officer, a 3% retroactive ongoing salary increase of $7,792, a 2% one-time off-schedule payment of $5,350, and placement on step 4 of the contracted management salary schedule on July 1st, 2022 at a salary of $275,525. For the Deputy Superintendent, Chief of Staff, a 3% retroactive ongoing salary increase of $8,025, a 2% one-time off-schedule payment of $5,510, and placement on step 5 of the contracted management salary schedule on July 1st, 2022 at a salary of $283,790. For the Superintendent of Schools, a 3% retroactive ongoing salary increase of $10,032, a 4% one-time off-schedule payment of $13,776, and a placement on step 5 of the contracted management salary schedule on July 1st, 2022 at an annual salary of $354,738. And I think that's all I need to read. Is there a motion or discussion on the recommendation for these compensation increases?
I move we approve the compensation increases as presented.
Second.
So that's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So those increases are approved. The next item on our agenda is item 6A, target tax rates for future bond issuances. Ms. Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Dubber. So this item is coming before the board this evening because following the issuance of measures A and Z bonds earlier this spring, the question was raised about our target tax rate. The combined rate for the two bonds was targeted at $100 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. Under Prop 39, the max rate we can target as a unified school district is $120 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. This represents $60 for each of our two bond measures, Measures A and Measure Z. The question is, should we continue with this $100 target or increase it to the max rate of $120? Ms. Chris Hyatt is a financial director with Keegan Advisors, and she will walk us through some scenarios using different rates and speak to the implications that each of those present.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. And thank you for the introduction, Carolyn. So here tonight to talk about Measure Z. Once we have that presentation pulled up, I can get started. All right. So starting on slide 1, a quick overview on Measure Z. Approved for $460 million, of which we have sold $270 million so far, leaving $190 million left to be issued in approximately April of 2025 is the schedule. As Carolyn mentioned, it was approved with a $39.40 tax rate, but legally we can take that up to $60 per $100,000. On slide 2, we have a history of the district's assessed valuation. This represents the value of all taxable properties within the district's boundaries. You have a very strong history of AV growth, well over 6% on all the long-term averages. This is important because we have to make a projection of where we expect this tax base to be in future years as these bonds are repaid. On slide 3, we have a projection of your aggregate tax rates. This would include both Measure B, Measure A, and Measure Z. You can see that this year we had a tax rate of $83.90, and it's going to go up to approximately $100 for the next 3 years, and it will then drop, leaving space for the remaining $190 million from Measure Z. On slide 4, we have a summary of the Santa Clara County tax rates. Your tax rate of $83.90 compares well to all these other districts listed. And this is helpful because if you are taking your tax rate up to $100 or $120, you can see how you compare to your neighboring districts. On slide 5, just a quick overview. So we're going to be showing you a few scenarios tonight for that remaining $190 million of Measure Z, again planned for April of 2025. Long-term AV growth, assuming 4%, so well below those 6% averages I showed on the previous slide. And we use the delinquency rates that the county uses. So here we are getting into the bulk of the presentation. Before you tonight, we have 4 different scenarios for the tax rate for that final issuance of Measure Z. The first scenario takes you to a $39.40 tax rate, which was the tax rate that voters approved, and you can see it stays at that rate through 2042. The second scenario takes it up to the $60 legal limit, and you can see it takes it up to $60 and then drops back down starting in 2033. Scenario 3 takes it up to $100 in aggregate, and you'll see that better on the next slide, but that would include Measure B and Measure A as well. And then the last scenario, it takes it up to $100 in aggregate, then we drop it to be an $80 aggregate tax rate. And again, you'll see it better here on this next slide, on slide 7. So this is what it looks like with all of the prior bonds, Measure A, Measure B, and Measure Z combined. So again, $39.40 for Scenario 1. Scenario 2, $60 takes you up to the 120 total number. Scenario 3 is $100 in every year until 2033. And then Scenario 4 is $100 in every year until 2029, where we start dropping it in anticipation of a potential future bond measure. So the district in the past has done new bonds in 1995, 2008, and 2018. So if there is a need for another bond, 2028 might make sense, in which case the new bond would roll in starting in 2030, which is why we dropped the tax rate in that year. So a lot of numbers here on the scenario summary, but basically the faster you repay the bonds, the lower the total cost is to taxpayers. But of course, they're paying more in the short term. And you can see that, for example, here on slide 9. I'm sorry, on slide 10. I'll get to that in a moment. So some considerations. If you increase the tax rates above the estimates provided to the voters at the time Measure Z was passed, there may be some political pushback, although I understand that this was done for Measure A and not much was heard at that point. If you are considering another bond measure in the future, you may want to be considering the aggregate tax rate because that's ultimately what taxpayers are going to be paying. And lastly, with current inflation, the time value of money is something to be considered. The value of the dollar 15 years from now is going to be a lot less than the cost of that dollar today. So longer term bonds, in that sense, make more sense. So here's that scenario comparison I was mentioning. If you take the tax rate up to $60, you can see that homeowners would be paying more in the short term and paying less in the long term, and overall would be paying less. But the question is whether or not you think your taxpayers can pay that increased rate in the short term. And one other consideration for you is just the impact to seniors. We know that seniors are often on fixed incomes. Seniors represent a fairly large portion of your district. So this data from the Census Bureau says that 22.8% of your residents are over the age of 65, and about 16% of your parcels have the senior disability exemption for your parcel tax. So we do know there's a large percentage of your taxpayers in that category. So a lot to consider here. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, comments or questions from board members on this question?
I have comments, not questions on your presentation, though. Thank you. So just briefly, our board last discussed tax rates in depth about 10 years ago, and we've used the same approach since then, which has been to have a maximum tax rate on the Measure A, and then subsequent, as I'll describe in a moment, we added $40 on Measure Z. In 2012, almost exactly 10 years ago, the board voted 4-1 to raise the tax rate to the statutory max, which was $60 per 100,000. This was higher than had been anticipated in the bond tax rate statement when that bond was passed in 2008. The tax rate statement listed about $44. The decision to go with the higher rate was well discussed over 2 meetings and widely publicized, and there was no pushback from the community. In fact, there were people speaking out in support of raising the rate. Overall, I think that approach has served taxpayers well, and we've had as low an interest expense and as low a payback ratio as any district in the state, as I'm sure Keegan could attest to. In 2018, when the new bond was layered on, the decision was made at the time to set the additional rate at $40 or $39.90, I forget what the number is, and to have the combined informal cap of $100. The idea was to continue with the max rate approach, but only up to $100 in order to pay back the bonds more quickly, as the lady presented. This approach was discussed by the property committee at the time, which included myself and trustee Terry Godfrey, along with the bond program staff, but not at any length by the board as a whole, though the board, of course, did approve the new tax rates. We can't actually remember why we decided to have a combined cap, informal cap of $100. I have to be honest, we can't remember. The individuals involved, the CBO, the bond program manager, the financial advisor, and the property committee members, everybody except for me, I don't know what that, there must be some message there, are no longer with the district. And I can't remember the reason or find any documentation for why we made that choice, though it was quite clear in my own notes and our informal practices that that was an explicit choice that we made. A reasonable question would be is whether we should increase the rate of both bonds to the statutory max of $60 and have a combined rate of 120 instead of 100. As described, that would lower our repayment ratios and lower the aggregate interest expense to our community. The board could also consider other approaches, of course. I think it makes a lot of sense to have a bond discussion on this question now, since we are, as Ms. Chow described, spending at a faster clip than we have in the past, and the tax rate obviously has a major impact on payback ratios. It also makes sense since the board has completely turned over. This discussion that I'm referring to in 2012 even predates Mr. Dauber's tenure. That's how long ago it was. And the current board may be unaware that. I think it's good to refresh everybody's memory and the staff. I think we found that this was sort of vaguely known, but nobody had really understood. Like most things, it's just lost in the mist of time. And it's good to have brought for community visibility and for the board, frankly, to weigh in on whatever their thoughts are, because there are other directions that we could go on this. So that's all my comments of that. I just wanted to establish the context for this discussion. I guess, well, as long as I have the mic. I mean, I personally would favor, I was one of the main people promoting raising to the statutory max 10 years ago. I think that policy has served us well and would continue to serve us well. I think we are a district that is in a financial position. I should say our taxpayers are in a financial position to pay the additional tax. If we weren't in a financial position to do so, I think it makes perfect sense. It's perfectly reasonable for districts to spread the payments out over time. But if you're able to afford to do that, then it's very desirable that you do, because obviously you'd rather invest that money, leave that money with taxpayers than pay it to bondholders, which is what we would do. And I know there was concern at the time that we raised the tax 10 years ago, that is the community going to how's the community going to feel about this? Is this with the will of the community? And I can tell you that everyone was paying close attention when the first property bills went out. I mean, we know there wasn't a lot of pushback when the vote was taken. There was virtually none. And we waited when the property bills went out, where people were going to call. One person wrote in, and Dr. Golton, who was the bond program manager, met with that person, as he was wont to do, and described to him why we raised the tax rate and what the impact was. And the person said, "Oh, very good." And that was the end of it. So I think I take that as an indication that our community likes our financial approach and likes our minimizing the impact, the payback ratios and the interest expense. And so I personally would suggest that we do that going forward.
Other comments?
I just want to clarify, Mr. Collins, so your suggestion would be scenario 2, right?
I didn't follow along. I had a little trouble. It says $60 tax rate on Measure Z. I guess that's right. I mean, we're already at $60 on Measure A.
It's the one that goes up to 120.
The one that goes to 120.
Yeah, I mean, yes, my recommendation is the maximum statutory rate for both Measure A and Measure Z, which is $120.
I would just add to that, to my colleagues. I think for me, scenario 2 or scenario 3 are I would think would be the only ones we should be talking about. I mean, we're looking at 1.12 and 1.17 versus 1.32 and 1.24. So those seems close enough to me that we could have a discussion about those, but the other two feel like does not feel fiscally responsible, the other two to me. So scenario 2 and 3, which is basically what we're doing now, scenario 2, which is, or scenario, yeah, 3, which is capping it at 100. And then scenario 2 would be willingness to go up to 120.
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again? I just lost you on the end there. You said.
Scenario 3 is essentially what we're doing now, which is capping it at 100 tax rate. What Mr. Collins talked about, kind of what we've been doing for 10 years.
Yeah.
The one thing I would point out in addition to, may I, Mr. Dauber?
No, go ahead, yeah.
The one thing I'd point out in addition that's a difference, and this is a less big deal than the other two things, is that the payback term on scenario 2 is 3 years less. And what that does is it provides flexibility to future boards and building programs to structure bonds in a way that is favorable to them at the time. Because and that's one of the things that we've historically really tried to avoid and we're very conscious of. If you stretch out payments over 30, 40 years, which was what was done in the past, especially at other districts, it's like you're basically handicapping your successors because you've used the district's financial capacity for the projects that you wanted. And so one of the things that I've really appreciated about our program of aggressively paying back and reducing those repayment times is we are telling our future selves, you get to make choices, we're not making the choices for you.
I was going to make that exact same point. The repayment rate to me was close enough that I don't really care that much, but the flexibility for future boards to me is what would push me to support scenario 2, because there's more space for future boards to pass another bond.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Generally, I agree with both of you. It's, as you spoke about, the rate of repaying it faster and how much money that saves, it reminded me of my mom, who was an economist, always said, you need money to make money. And this is a good reminder of that, right? We've got it, and it makes it easier. It's a very privileged position to be in. Of course, I want us to remember that's not true of every homeowner in Palo Alto, right? And so I'm just, one of the things that's going through my head now, and I don't know what the answer is the impact of tremendous inflation right now. And probably for many of our families, that isn't going to make a difference in their ability to pay a higher property tax, but for some of them, it might. While thinking about future bonds and knowing the condition and the date of all of our elementary school builds and where they're at now and what the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years holds, I think I assume future boards will be going out for future bonds. And I just want to make sure that we find that sweet spot where we do leave them room to go out for a future bond, because our elementary schools especially are going to need attention in the coming years, but not go so high that people aren't so supportive of bonds anymore because we've now, gone up higher than they were comfortable with or they thought that they were voting for when they voted. So none of these increases seem super drastic to me, but I also am aware that there might be some families that it is kind of drastic for. And I don't want to handicap future boards in a decreased support of bonds going forward because of an increase now unexpectedly.
Other comments? Yeah, I certainly support an increase in the tax rate. I think the arguments make sense. The $100 sounds to me like it might be related to the tax rate commitment that was made, but it sounds more like it's just a round number that made sense, and that's not the best basis for making a fiscal decision, so we shouldn't feel bound by it. This isn't obviously up for action tonight, and I'm not sure that we're going to be, we have noticed it for discussion. Do we anticipate action in the next meeting, or is this action that would only be relevant once we issue more bonds and then set the tax rates for those bonds? Yeah, okay. So we'll remember this discussion when we are in a position to set the tax rate next.
Is documenting said discussion.
Okay. We're not taking action, so we're not making a commitment about what we're going to do, but it sounds to me like we've had an informative discussion that will probably lead to
I just add one more thing, because Ms. Latimerica's pointed this out, and I thought it was really a good point. It's like, well, as I mentioned, most of the people who are involved in these discussions are gone. And a question arises, like, okay, we had this good thinking, we had this nice discussion. How do we inform our future selves that this is the thinking and this is the decision that we made? And that's a really good question. We've not done a great job historically as a district in memorializing institutional knowledge. And so something to think about. We don't have to answer it at the dais here, but I think it's a good question that applies to a lot of things, is that we do good thinking and we come to a conclusion. How do we memorialize that in a way that future boards can access and benefit from our experience? If benefit in inverted quotes, of course, yeah.
I suppose
Or from our mistakes.
I suppose the only thing that really endures is board policy. So we could create a board policy around this that sort of states the sense of the board as everything else being equal, we prefer shorter, repayment timeframes and higher.
Yeah, I
tax
defer to
rates.
the BPRC on that one.
I actually think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so maybe we'll ask the BPRC to take that up, and then maybe we'll hear back from them with a proposal. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this or comments? Then let's move on to our staff report, which is item 7A. This is the Every Student Reads Initiative. Is this Ms. Ofek?
It's Ms. Brown. It's going to get us started.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. Good evening, Board Trustees. Tonight we are providing an update from the first year of the Every Student Reads Initiative. But first, I'd like to thank all the elementary staff members, teachers, classified principals, district office staff, TOSAs, and of course, Ms. Reynolds, for all the focus and attention given to this initiative. Everyone has worked tirelessly over this year, and we are all excited to refine our work in the coming year. As a reminder to the board, our progress monitoring for the Every Student Reads initiative includes 3 indicators of success. 2 to be measured by the SBAC assessment results, which will not be available until the fall, and the 3rd one from our end of the year BASS reading assessment. Tonight, we have prepared the data from the BASS assessment as well as areas of focus for the coming year. I'd like to turn this over to Ms. Reynolds, who will share more detailed information around our work and next steps. Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Good evening, board members. The Every Student Reads Initiative was a significant focus for elementary educators this year. Of the many strategies implemented, 3 stand out as most effective. The training and implementation of our TK through 3rd grade teachers in the Orton-Gillingham methodology, our elementary principals learning collaborative, and the professional learning and reading that occurred during our staff development days. The attachment in the board packet is a detailed description of the strategies implemented this year, the next steps and areas for improvement. The Every Student Reads Initiative Progress Indicator 3 called for an increase of 5% from the baseline year of 18-19 in the number of kindergarten through 5th grade students meeting or exceeding the end-of-year BAS benchmark for the 6 identified student groups. English learners and students with disabilities exceeded the goal, demonstrating an increase of 13% and 12% respectively. We have started to review the reasons for this significant double-digit growth, and we're excited. Socioeconomically disadvantaged students increased by 1%. Black, African American, and Hispanic Latino students increased by 2%. Pacific Islander students decreased by 2%. While we did not meet the goal for these student groups, there are some factors to consider. COVID-19 disrupted 2 years of traditional schooling with various teaching models, including some words you might remember: asynchronous, synchronous, hybrid, full year distance learning. Unconscious bias has been and continues to be a factor in student achievement. And returning to school this year with ongoing concerns about COVID-19 variants are all factors that should be considered when reviewing this data. Our goal requires a considerable increase in reading proficiency for our student groups. For example, a typical year's growth would be 3 reading levels. I would like to acknowledge and recognize the substantial reading improvement of our student groups. 243 1st through 5th grade students that did not meet the end-of-year benchmark did grow between 3 to 10 reading levels this year. That's a year to over 3 years worth of growth. and yet we still have them not meeting benchmark. So that's what it takes to meet our goal. It's quite substantial. And we're proud of that intensive work that teachers did with these students and the work that children did throughout the year to make that level of growth. We will be looking to identify those most impactful strategies for these students who did make significant growth so we can replicate them across the district. Most student groups maintained or improved slightly during the last 3 years, and this is significant as districts across the country report a considerable decline for students during the pandemic. At the January board meeting this year, the TK through 12 literacy teams shared their work researching and piloting universal screeners for reading and markers for dyslexia. In reviewing multiple screeners, the team found that iReady addresses the needs of our work. It is recommended that iReady replace the BAS and the Shaywitz dyslexia screener for district reporting. iReady is a universal screener that provides diagnostic information regarding student strengths and areas for development in 5 reading domains. As a grade-level Common Core aligned reading assessment, this online tool provides standardized results and supports the goals of the Every Student Reads initiative. Additional benefits include that this is a computer adaptive assessment tool. It will decrease the time teachers spend on administering assessments and reporting data by approximately 90%, and will then add back almost a week of instructional time throughout the school year. The results include suggestions for grouping students for intervention and provides lessons for teachers to use with their own curriculum. Students have access to online lessons geared toward the areas for development. iReady also provides grade-level projections and specific areas of reading instruction required to reach grade-level reading proficiency. For more frequent classroom-level information, Educational Services recommends that teachers administer quick formative reading assessments to advise their instruction. Benchmark Advanced Adelante provides these quick oral reading fluency tests and running records, where teachers can listen to students read and answer comprehension questions. Teachers can analyze the students' reading for accuracy. This ongoing quick assessment is essential in teaching children how to read at all elementary grades. The BAS may continue to be used at the local level as needed to inform instruction, assessing students to the highest instructional level, which is the way the assessment tool was intended to be used. At the April board meeting, you all approved Benchmark Advanced Adelante for adoption. You might remember that meeting too. The first of 2 summer trainings took place June 4th and June 5th. 53 educators attended the workshop. We're excited about that attendance, and their survey results demonstrate that the training was a tremendous accomplishment in helping teachers feel prepared to teach the new curriculum in the fall. 100% of the survey respondents reported that the training was a successful learning experience, and attendees received helpful ideas for teaching reading. Our next steps include consulting and informing teachers and getting them trained in iReady, providing ongoing training on the research on how children learn to read, deliver differentiated training on our new curriculum, Benchmark Advanced Adelante, and to develop an assessment and reporting calendar to be shared with the Board of Education following the confirmation of iReady. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other staff comments on the item? Okay, board members. Mr. Branza?
Thank you. Thank you for putting all these data together. And the presentation was particularly interesting because the initial data were not very encouraging. We didn't meet our goals in most of the areas that we were shooting for, and delving deeply into the data gave us a lot more information that was a lot more encouraging. I want to just acknowledge the fact that as part of the promise, we said we were going to move all 6 of these groups 5%, and we did not do that with the majority of our groups. So that's concerning, and I think, as you mentioned, there are lots of reasons probably that didn't happen. I am curious, I mean, I'm not a big fan of like, hey, we didn't make the goals, so let's change the goal, but I'm just wondering if you all still feel that is the goal to be working towards. And I also wonder if there should be other goals in between, right? The idea that there are hundreds of kids that made that still aren't on grade level, that fall in this category of kids that are not where we want them to be, but some of them made up to 3 years of progress in 1 year, is amazing. And obviously a testament to all the work. I mean, this initiative has taken a lot of time and a lot of energy from all of our teachers and all of our principals and so much of our staff and our students. So clearly progress has been made, and it's not reflected in this, we're going to increase, by 5% in each of the 6 categories. So I think for me, it's a both and. Is this 5% still something that you want to stick with? And I hope that we see, us kind of catch up next time. And are there other measures like this one that would help paint a fuller picture?
So I would say we're going to keep on trying to reach these goals. And these are the 3 progress indicators for the board. We do use our local assessments, and every trimester we are updating where the students are and making plans. And we have our MTSS process where we set goals for students. So we have, and we measure those every 8 weeks. So we have more that we could share. We made a promise, another promise, that you all asked me when we set these goals, what if you don't make them? Is it only going to be 5% up from there? At this point, I'm feeling like we need to make, it'll be 5% more for the 13, for the 2 groups that made it. And the other groups are going to need to have 5% plus 4%. But I think we get lost in the percentages. And I think that maybe setting the goal, it was a shot in the dark goal. But we are seeing such huge progress that doesn't show up initially, even with the pandemic. We're going to keep going. And now we know where to look for the strategies that really move those kids 3 years, 2 years. So the first year we were trying things. Now we have some more specifics and great data to help us keep moving forward.
Right.
Did I answer your question?
Whatever you did with the kids that made 2, 3, made 7, 8, 9, 10 levels in a year, do that more. Or maybe it's different for different kids, right? Who knows? But certainly I'm looking at that. Hopefully will make a big difference going forward. I look forward to seeing what happens next year. I agree with you. I hope that for those that only move 2%, that next year we see 8% to really keep working towards that goal. I'm interested to see what the iReady does for us. I mean, the idea of one of the things the teachers have told us over and over again is we are overwhelmed, you're killing us here. There's just so much going on. So if you find an assessment that is accurate and informative, that only requires about 2 hours of time rather than 30, yay, I'm all in for that. And hopefully those that are really finding the BAS helpful, which I know it really can be, will continue to use that in the ways that it's helpful for them. I am curious about sort of an apples to oranges comparison next year, if we're looking at who made BAS levels, and next year we're going to be looking at iReady. Obviously that might be a little complicated. How do you envision that working?
There is a conversion chart with iReady and BAS.
How lovely.
So we'll be able to.
Simple answer, I like it. Okay, well, thank you for all your work this year, and thanks to all of our teachers and staff who just busted it out this year. And I am disappointed in some ways and really encouraged in others. So I thank you for all your work, and keep at it. Let us know what else you need.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for the year's worth of work. Just to clarify, this isn't the report card, right? because the report card is the CASP, right? This is a preliminary, so this isn't.
This is what our goals, we, as a board, decided that we want 3 measures, 2 CASP and 1 BAS. This is
Okay,
one of them.
okay, so this is one of, so this isn't the final report card, this is an element of the report card.
Right, the final, we will have the the CASP results in the fall. We would like to present all 3 at one time in the coming year.
Sure.
To make it more simple. But
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had this data and we were anxious.
Oh, absolutely, no, I think this was the right thing to do, so, but I just wanted to clarify that, you know, the jury is still out on how we did this year, because
Right.
we'll know when we get those results. I'm pretty encouraged by this. I spend time, an unhealthy amount of time, looking at the reading results of other districts and states and jurisdictions. I can tell you the state of Tennessee just had a major celebration because their statewide results comparing 2022 to 2019 are about the same as what you presented. And they considered that a incredible victory because they were able to overcome what they viewed as 2 years of incredibly difficult challenges with COVID instruction. And they also, like us, had put a big emphasis on reading and had several reading initiatives going. And they felt that slight improvement over what they had achieved in 2019 was a cause for celebration. So I just provide that as context because, you know, it just happened last week and people were talking about it, but I do think it's relevant context here. I've also seen other districts that, you know, with very strong reading programs that saw their 2021 results, last year's results, dramatically fall off from 2019, and then are hoping to see recovery this year to something close to what they had in 2019. So, you know, I think it's just a reflection that, you know, we're looking at these results and, you know, you guys presented it pretty starkly. Here's data point 1, data point 2, and here's the line, and, you know, which I think is great because, you know, we set up a rubric for evaluating this, and you guys presented the data in the context of the rubric. That's great. But I do think, you know, the context in which you achieve that is, to me, an important consideration, and I'm encouraged. And, you know, I hope we'll see what the rest of the grades look like when they come in the fall, and I think I'm hopeful that we'll see even greater progress next year. So thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Other comments?
Can I just make
Ms. Latimer?
one quick comment? I basically agree with everything my colleagues have said. I want to say one thing, though, that I feel like needs to be commented on. It is true that white and Asian students increased by 4%, however, over 2019. And so while I hear everything that Mr. Collins is saying, I also think it's interesting that the student groups that weren't part of this initiative managed to increase despite all of the obstacles that you laid out for us. So we actually have increased the gap between our higher performing groups and our lower performing groups. So not to be Debbie Downer here, but you mentioned implicit bias. I don't need you to tell me now why that happened. I just want to comment that it feels like we need to call that out, that all of our students were going through the same obstacles with hybrid learning and remote learning and COVID and all of that, yet somehow race seemed to matter again. So I just don't want to lose that in. What I do agree are basically pretty positive results, and I'm proud of us, and I think we're doing a great job, but I want to make sure that we don't lose that data point.
Can I just add one more point? Yeah, I appreciate your pointing that out, Trustee Lerner-Merrick. I mean, when I've looked at COVID results, one of the things that struck academic results during the COVID period, the thing that struck me is that that pattern that you pointed out is very common, almost universal. And my interpretation of it has always been that it's a reflection of the supports that many kids have at home during a time where home-based instruction and your circumstances at home were even more relevant to your educational outcome than they are in non-COVID times, which is obviously already very important. So, I think there are lots of ways to think about that, and I appreciate you raising it. I don't necessarily view it as a problem with the program. I'm not suggesting that you suggested that it was. But I guess that's my reaction to it, is that during COVID, affluent families, frankly, just uniformly showed more resilient results. And I always interpret that to the level of outside support that they have virtually all the time, that just shows up even more during COVID-type instruction. Looks like Ms. Latimer.
I just want to make sure we're not conflating affluence with race, though. I mean, there are SED families who are white and Asian in our district, too. So I just want to, I mean.
Actually, very few.
Yes, I hear what you're saying, but I just want to make sure that we have a separate category for SED students, and I want to make sure that we, like I said, I don't need all of that answered here, but I just want to make sure, to Mr. Collins' point, that we're diving into those categories a little bit, which I'm sure you are. Yeah. And making sure there's not just money and resources going on, that there may be more going on in those numbers.
Okay, I agree with all of that comment. I also wanted to thank staff for following through on the professional development commitment. That was an important part of the conversation that we had around supporting the transition to benchmark, was getting effective professional development in place, and it sounds like that's happened, quite quickly. So thank you for that work, and I appreciate the work of teachers in, embracing that and participating in that. I think that's really important. So thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Let's then move on to information items. We have 4 information items. We don't take these individually, and there's no staff reports on them, but if there's some public comment or board members want to comment or ask a question, then we do that. I don't believe there's any public comment. There isn't. Board members, any comments or questions on any of these items? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is board operations. Any reports from board members under board operations? Nope. Then the last item on our agenda is adjournment, and since this is the last meeting of the school year, we will adjourn for a couple of months and be back. I think it's August the 23rd, but I could be wrong about that. But we'll be back at the beginning of next school year. Thank you for all of your good work during the school year, and look forward to seeing you in the next one. This meeting is adjourned.